There's something quietly happening inside your body right now, and most people over 60 don't even realize it until it's too late. It doesn't start with a loud warning. It starts with something small. A little stiffness when you wake up. A slight discomfort in your knees when you stand. Maybe your hands don't feel as strong as they used to. And then one day, you hesitate. You hesitate before climbing stairs. You hesitate before getting out of a chair. You hesitate before doing something you've done your whole life. And that hesitation? That's where independence begins to slip. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What if I told you that some of the foods you're eating every day, the ones you believe are healthy, might actually be making your joints worse? And even more surprising, what if the solution isn't expensive supplements, injections, or complicated treatments, but simple vegetables sitting in your kitchen right now?
So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually think about this. Have you noticed more stiffness, more discomfort, or less flexibility in your body compared to just a few years ago? Be honest with yourself, and if you have, type yes in the comments. Because what you're about to learn could genuinely change how your body feels in the next few months. Now, here's where things get interesting. Most people think joint pain is just a natural part of aging, something you have to accept. But that's not entirely true. What experts have found is that one of the biggest hidden causes of joint stiffness and pain is chronic inflammation. And the scary part? Inflammation doesn't just affect your joints. It slowly affects your entire body, your energy, your mobility, even your ability to stay independent. But here's the good news. Inflammation is not something you're powerless against. In fact, your daily food choices can either fuel it or fight it.
And this is where everything begins to shift. Because today we're going to talk about 7 powerful vegetables that don't just help a little, they actively reduce inflammation and protect your joints, especially after 60. But don't skip ahead, because the order matters. The first ones are helpful, but the last few, that's where things get truly surprising. And most people have never even heard this explained properly. Let's start with something simple, something almost everyone recognizes. Spinach. Now, at first, spinach might not seem special. It's common, it's affordable, it's everywhere. But what most people don't realize is this. Spinach is loaded with compounds that directly target inflammation at the cellular level. We're talking about antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E, and beta-carotene. And here's why that matters. As you age, your body becomes less efficient at controlling inflammation. It's like a fire that never fully goes out,
and over time, that fire starts damaging your joints. But spinach, it works like a natural cooling system, helping your body calm that internal inflammation before it spreads. Now imagine this for a moment. A 68-year-old man wakes up every morning with stiff knees. It takes him a few minutes just to feel comfortable walking. He assumes this is just age. But over the next few weeks, he starts adding spinach regularly to his meals. Nothing extreme, just consistent. And slowly, something changes. The stiffness doesn't disappear overnight, but it softens. Movement becomes easier. Mornings feel less painful. And that's the key word here, consistency. Because these vegetables don't work like painkillers. They don't mask the problem. They help your body heal from within. But here's where most people make a mistake.
They eat spinach once or twice and expect miracles. That's not how this works. This is about building a daily anti-inflammatory environment in your body. And spinach is just the beginning. Because what comes next is something far more powerful, and surprisingly, something many people avoid. Broccoli. Now I know, not everyone loves broccoli, but what I'm about to tell you might change how you see it forever. Broccoli contains a compound called sulforaphane, and this is where things get fascinating. Research has shown that sulforaphane can actually block the process that leads to joint inflammation and cartilage damage. Let me say that again. Not just reduce pain, but potentially slow down the damage itself. And this is where things really change, because most treatments focus on symptoms, pain relief, temporary comfort. But broccoli? It works deeper than that. It targets the root. Now imagine a 72-year-old woman who used to love gardening, but over time her hands became stiff, her knees didn't cooperate, and slowly she stopped. Not because she wanted to, but because her body made the decision for her. Now, what if something as simple as changing her diet, adding more anti-inflammatory foods like broccoli, could help her get back to that? That's not just health, that's quality of life. And this is where most people underestimate the power of food. They think it's just vegetables, but in reality, it's daily medicine. But here's the surprising part. Not all vegetables work the same way. Some are powerful, and some are almost essential. And the next one we're about to talk about, this is where things take a serious turn. Because it doesn't just reduce inflammation, it helps your body repair itself. Carrots. Now again, this might sound simple, almost too simple, but don't let that fool you. Carrots are rich in beta-carotene, which your body converts into vitamin A, and this plays a crucial role in tissue repair, including the tissues around your joints. But here's what most people don't realize. Inflammation doesn't just cause pain, it also slows down your body's ability to heal. So even small joint damage takes longer to recover. That's why some people feel like their body is not bouncing back anymore. But when you start giving your body the right nutrients, you're not just reducing damage, you're improving recovery. And that's a game changer. Now think about this. What if the real goal isn't just to avoid pain, but to keep your body capable? Capable of walking freely, capable of moving without fear, capable of living independently. Because once that capability starts to fade, everything else follows. But don't worry, because what we're about to get into next, this is where things become even more powerful. In fact, the next vegetable on this list has been linked to something many people over 60 struggle with: joint swelling that just won't go away. And what's surprising is, most people are either not eating it at all, or they're preparing it in a way that completely destroys its benefits. And this is exactly where things change. Now here's where things start to get really interesting, because the next vegetable isn't just helpful, it's one of the most underestimated foods when it comes to stubborn joint swelling. And yet, most people either ignore it or completely ruin its benefits without realizing it. Garlic. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Garlic? Really? It's just something for flavor, right? That's what most people believe. But here's where it gets surprising. Garlic contains powerful sulfur compounds that actively fight inflammation in the body, not in a mild way, in a deep cellular way. Studies have shown that these compounds can actually reduce inflammatory markers linked to joint pain and stiffness. And this is where things change. Because unlike many foods that support health, garlic directly interferes with the pathways that cause inflammation in the first place. Now imagine this: a 70-year-old who feels constant swelling in their knees. Not sharp pain, but that heavy, uncomfortable pressure, the kind that makes walking feel like effort instead of freedom. They try medications, they try rest, but nothing fully resolves it. Now, slowly, they begin adding garlic to their meals daily. Raw, lightly cooked, consistent, and over time, the swelling begins to ease. Not overnight, but noticeably. Because what's happening inside the body is different now. The inflammation isn't being constantly fueled anymore. It's being controlled. But here's the part most people get wrong. They cook garlic at very high temperatures for too long, and that destroys the very compounds that make it powerful. So the key isn't just eating garlic, it's how you prepare it. Light cooking, or even crushing it and letting it sit for a few minutes before use, that's where the real benefits begin. But stay with me, because what comes next is even more surprising. Because the next vegetable doesn't just reduce inflammation, it helps protect your joints from long-term damage. And almost nobody talks about it properly. Beets. Now, beets are one of those foods people either love or completely avoid. But here's what most people don't realize. That deep red color? It's not just visual, it's a signal. Beets are packed with betalains, natural compounds with strong anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. And this is where things get powerful, because these compounds don't just reduce inflammation, they help protect your cells from oxidative stress. Now, let me explain that simply. As you age, your body accumulates damage from something called oxidative stress. Think of it like rust, slowly building up inside your body. And that rust contributes to joint pain, stiffness, and reduced mobility. But beets? They help slow that process down. And this is where most people miss the bigger picture. It's not just about reducing pain today. It's about protecting your body for the next 5, 10, even 15 years. Now imagine someone who starts taking this seriously at 65,
compared to someone who ignores it until 75. The difference in mobility, independence, and quality of life is massive. And that's why this matters. But don't move on yet, because the next vegetable might surprise you even more. Because it's something many people eat regularly, but they have no idea how powerful it actually is. And this is where things shift again. Bell peppers. Bright, colourful, common. But hidden inside bell peppers is something your joints desperately need. Vitamin C. And not just a little, a lot. Now here's why that matters. Vitamin C plays a key role in producing collagen, and collagen is essential for maintaining healthy cartilage, which is basically the cushion between your joints.
Now think about that for a moment. When that cushion weakens, movement becomes painful, friction increases, stiffness follows. But when you support collagen production, you're helping your joints stay smoother, more flexible, more resilient. And this is where people make a big mistake. They focus only on reducing pain, but they ignore rebuilding and protecting their joints. And that's why the problem keeps coming back. But bell peppers? They support both sides of the equation, reduce inflammation, and support joint structure. And this is where things really begin to come together. Because now you're not just reacting to pain,
You're building a stronger body. But stay with me, because what comes next is something many people avoid completely, and they don't even realize what they're missing. Leafy greens, especially kale. Now, kale has gained a reputation. Some people love it, others avoid it like it's medicine. But here's the truth. Kale is one of the most nutrient-dense vegetables you can eat. It's loaded with vitamin K, calcium, and antioxidants. And here's where it gets important. Vitamin K plays a key role in bone and joint health. It helps regulate calcium in your body, making sure it goes where it's needed instead of building up where it shouldn't. And this is where many people over 60 struggle. Calcium imbalance, weak bones, joint discomfort. But kale helps bring balance back. Now, imagine someone who avoids greens their entire life, then suddenly starts incorporating them regularly. It's not just about nutrients. It's about giving the body tools it's been missing for years. And slowly, things begin to change. But here's the part most people don't expect. The final vegetable on this list might be the most powerful of them all. And yet, Many people either ignore it or use it incorrectly. And what it does inside your body could completely change how your joints feel. And this is where everything comes together. Turmeric, or more specifically, turmeric root as a vegetable spice. Now, you've probably heard of turmeric before, but here's the difference. Most people don't use it correctly, and because of that, they never experience its full benefits. Turmeric contains a compound called curcumin, and this is where things become truly powerful. Curcumin is one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatory compounds in the world. It doesn't just reduce inflammation, it can rival some pharmaceutical effects without the same side effects when used properly. But here's the catch. Your body doesn't absorb curcumin easily, and this is where most people fail. They sprinkle a little turmeric into food and expect results. But what most people don't realize is turmeric needs black pepper to become highly absorbable. Without it, you're missing most of the benefit. And this is where things change. Because now, you're not just eating vegetables randomly, you're using them intelligently. And that's the difference between small results and life-changing results. Now take a moment and think about everything we've just covered. Spinach, broccoli, carrots, garlic, beets, bell peppers, kale, turmeric. Each one plays a different role. Each one supports your body in a different way. But together, they create something powerful, an environment inside your body, where inflammation struggles to survive, where joints feel supported, where movement becomes easier, and most importantly, where independence lasts longer. But here's the real question. What are you going to do with this information? Because knowing something and applying it are two completely different things. And this is where your future begins to take shape. And this is where everything either comes together or quietly falls apart. Because by now, you know something most people don't. You know that inflammation isn't just part of aging. You know that your daily food choices are either helping your joints or slowly damaging them. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Knowing this isn't enough. Because what most people over 60 do next is exactly where they lose progress. They go back to old habits. They eat these vegetables once or twice, maybe for a few days, and then life takes over, and everything slowly returns to the way it was. But here's where it gets surprising. The real difference between someone who stays active at 75 and someone who struggles at 65 is not luck. It's not genetics alone. It's consistency. And this is where things quietly shift in your favor if you understand one simple idea. Your body is always responding to what you do repeatedly, not occasionally, repeatedly. Now imagine two people, both in their late 60s, both experiencing joint stiffness. One of them starts adding these vegetables into their meals, but only when they remember. The other builds a simple daily habit, nothing extreme, just consistent. Weeks pass, months pass, and slowly their bodies begin to tell two very different stories. One continues to struggle. The other starts to feel lighter, more flexible, more in control. And here's the part most people don't realize. The change is so gradual that it's almost invisible at first. But over time, it becomes undeniable. And this is where the real transformation begins. But don't relax just yet, because there's something critical we haven't talked about. And this is where most people unknowingly sabotage everything. Cooking mistakes. Yes, something as simple as how you cook your food can either preserve these powerful nutrients or destroy them completely. Let me explain. Take broccoli, for example. When overcooked, especially boiled for too long, it loses much of its sulforaphane, the very compound that protects your joints. So what most people think is healthy becomes far less effective. Now think about garlic again. If you crush garlic and immediately cook it at high heat, you reduce its anti-inflammatory power. But if you let it sit for a few minutes before cooking, you activate its beneficial compounds. Small detail, massive difference. And this is where things get interesting. Because it's not just about what you eat. It's about how you use it. Now let me ask you something. How many times have you eaten something healthy but didn't feel any real difference? This might be why. But here's where it gets even more important. Because there's another hidden factor. Something that silently increases inflammation, even if you're eating all the right foods. And most people never connect the two. Sugar, processed foods, and excess refined oils. Now this is where reality hits. You can eat all the anti-inflammatory vegetables you want, but if your diet is still filled with inflammatory foods, you're fighting a battle on two fronts. It's like trying to put out a fire while still pouring fuel on it. And this is why some people say,
I tried eating healthy. It didn't work. But the truth is, they didn't remove what was causing the problem. And this is where things change for you, because now you see the full picture. Add the right foods, reduce the harmful ones, and suddenly your body is no longer under constant attack. Now imagine this: a 74-year-old who used to feel exhausted after a short walk. Their knees felt heavy, their movements were slow, careful, restricted. Now, over time, they make small changes. They start including these vegetables daily. They reduce processed foods. They pay attention to how they cook. And something begins to happen. Their walks get longer. Their steps feel lighter. Their confidence returns. And that confidence, that's everything. Because when you trust your body again, you start living again. But here's where things become even more powerful. There's one final piece, and most people overlook it completely. Hydration. Now, I know it sounds simple, almost too simple. But here's what most people don't realize. Your joints are surrounded by fluid, and that fluid helps reduce friction and support movement. When you're dehydrated, that lubrication decreases, and suddenly everything feels stiffer, heavier, more uncomfortable. Now combine dehydration with inflammation, and you've created the perfect environment for joint pain. But when you stay properly hydrated, you're supporting everything else you're doing. And this is where everything connects. Food, habits, hydration, consistency. It's not one thing, it's the combination. And that's what creates real change. Now pause for a moment and think about your daily routine. Not what you plan to do, but what you actually do. Because that's what shapes your future. And here's the truth most people avoid. Your body in the next 5 years is being built by your habits today. Not someday, today. But here's the encouraging part. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need a perfect diet. You don't need expensive solutions. You just need small, consistent improvements. Add one vegetable, then another. Adjust one habit, then another. And slowly, you begin to shift the direction of your health. And this is where things become personal. Because this isn't just about joints. It's about independence. It's about waking up and feeling capable. It's about walking without hesitation. It's about living life without constantly thinking about pain. And that's something worth protecting. Now, before we finish, I want you to do something simple. Ask yourself this question: what is one small change I can start today? Not tomorrow, not next week, today. And when you have your answer, commit to it, because that one small step might be the beginning of something much bigger. And if this helped you see your health differently, if even one part of this made you think, then take a second to support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe, because what you learn next might be exactly what your body has been waiting for. And remember, it's never too late to take control of how you feel. But the moment you start, that's the moment everything begins to change.